the hostile attitude I adopt towards bad poetry. Under this heading I group anything by Dr. Seuss, who is to poetry what craft dinner is to gastronomy. Yes, I knew you'd say that. And also that abomination by Joyce Kilmer entitled Trees. By perhaps unwisely declaring my critical position, I've incurred the wrath of certain students in the writing course who turned savagely upon me. Dr. Seuss apparently can do no wrong for some, despite the fact that his scenarios are monstrous and defy imagination. People presumably fall about laughing uncontrollably on hearing witty lines such as peppermint, cucumber, sausage paste, butter, and positively worship the good doctor for enriching the world with passages such as, "I'll go to the African island of Yerka and bring back a chisel-topped tufted mazurka, a kind of canary with quite a tall throat. His neck is so long if he swallows an oat for breakfast the first day of April, they say, it has to go down such a very long way that it gets to its stomach the 15th of May. Thank you, Dr. Seuss. Where would civilization have been without it? I also hold up Kilmer's Trees as an example of bad poetry. Despite the anger that may well erupt again this evening, I stand by my position that you cannot base good poetry on absurdity, and Kilmer's Trees is flawed from the start with the ridiculous assertion, "I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree," as though one gazed enwrapped into the lovely outline of a sonnet, an ode, a clericure, and a epithalamium, but never read the bloody thing. But having started out disastrously, Kilmer goes on to do yet worse by having his tree engage in a series of somersaults which involve placing its mouth upon the earth's breast and sucking plentifully. Having sucked, the tree then stands upright and raises its branches to pray to God. The metaphors simply do not work. Poems are made by fools like me, says Kilmer towards the end. He got that right at least. Kilmer aficionados may be interested to know that the New Jersey Turnpike Authority has named a rest area on that highway after Kilmer. If then you're in the vicinity of East Brunswick Township and need to use the facilities, you can stop off at the Kilmer rest area and pay your respects. So if I have no time for bad poetry, how is it that I stand before you this evening about to speak in praise of bad poets? I suppose the title of the talk is not ideal for the subject matter, but to convey a sense of what I want to talk about would have required a more complex and less tidy heading. Let us say, boos and jeers notwithstanding, that Kilmer and Seuss are bad poets. We subject them to the standard critical analysis, and they come up wanting. But for a brief time in the 19th century, the English-speaking world was blessed with poets who were not simply bad, they were bad beyond bad. They were so bad as to defy the usual criteria of criticism. They stand alone, magnificent, in a literary realm of their own where the likes of Kilmer and Seuss simply cannot compete. I should like to take you into that world now. As Hugo Rana proposes in that remarkable little book, Man at Play, I should like us to be prepared to accept the unimagined and incredible, to enter a world where different laws apply, to be relieved of all the weights that bear our mind down, to be free, kingly, unfettered, and divine. Let us enter the poetic universes of three poets misunderstood and maligned, three poets labeled bad. Let us see what treasures they have for us, and let us see how unjustly they have been used. We shall visit them in their chronological order, and this means beginning with Thomas Holly Chivers. Chivers was born in Washington, Georgia in 1807, and he died in Decatur, Georgia in 1858. He studied medicine, but since he inherited wealth, he practiced but little, and fortunately for posterity, devoted himself entirely to his muse. He traveled north and sang to the straight-laced Yankees songs the likes of which they had never heard before, songs conceived in the depths of sultry southern nights, songs redolent of peach blossom and magnolia, hypnotic songs of sweet simplicity, songs like the song of Rosalie Lee. Many mellow Sidonian sockets, sweet apples and fosmeal divine, from the ruby-rimmed berry-lined bucket, star-gemmed, lily-shaped hyaline, like the sweet golden goblet found growing on the wild emerald cucumber tree, rich, brilliant, like chrysoprase glowing, was my beautiful Rosalie Lee. I was hoping to be able to develop a Georgian accent. In fact, I actually went on the internet this evening for examples of Georgian pronunciation, but I did not feel brave enough to attempt to reproduce it this evening. I have to put up with my normal accent until we get a little later into the talk. So that was my beautiful Rosalie Lee. Strange to say, critical reaction was not universally favorable. Some Philistine hack on the New York Quarterly wrote, "Such a farrago of pedantry, piety, blasphemy, sensuality, and delirious fancies has seldom before gained the imprint of a respectable publisher." Blooded but unbowed, Chivers sang on. He sang songs of vistas and wonderlands that only an inspired imagination such as his could behold. Let Chivers transport us to Atlanta, the true blessed island of poesy, the land of the seafaring grapes. Upon the sand, close by the water's edge, where smokes their little boat upon the shore, clusters of luscious grapes were scattered round, in prodigal confusion on the ground, and ebon muscadines of lustrous black, like drops of polished night, waved down their vines, so that the cool lips of the crystal wave, swayed by the presence of the noontide breeze, lapped them with liquid kisses from the shore, till they went dangling far away from land, like little ebon barks upon the lake. Some reviewers, however, were able to appreciate Chivers' genius. The editor of the Knickerbocker found a volume of Chivers' verses to be a casket overbrimming with the most incomparable gems that ever sparkled in heaven's light. I don't know what he was on. Much encouraged, Chivers took up his lyre again and sang on. In the May morn when I sought her, freely to know, from the achromatic water, ruby-tinct low, did this Dian, heaven's sweet daughter, bring to me now this sweet eonk, which I taught her loudly to blow. Oh, knock it off, Browning, I hear you cry. Stop playing the giddy goat. What in heaven's name is an eonk? The question's an excellent one, which I'm happy to explore with you. What we have proof of here is the awe which Chivers inspires in so many of his readers. For more than 150 years, the word eonk has stood in Chivers' poetry. Unquestioned and unchallenged, despite the fact that the word is not to be found in any dictionary. Eonk it was in the 19th century, and eonk it continued to be in this 1972 edition of some of Chivers' verses. Eonk, a word which not even the 1972 editor, the learned Harold Bloom, was courageous enough to query. Such was the fascination he felt for Chivers. I believe I have the answer to the riddle, and I hope to make my mark on United States literary scholarship sometime soon by publishing what you are about to hear. Chivers at no time intended to write eonk. Although I have not seen the original manuscripts of Chivers' poems, I am convinced that an examination of his handwriting would show that Chivers wrote his capital C's with a particular flourish, which led the average plodding typesetter to suppose they were E's. Consequently, find eonks where Chivers intended there to be conks, as in large and beautiful shell used in some parts of the world as a trumpet for ritual purposes. I shall also show, when I come to write this learned article, that Chivers was clearly going through his conk period in the early 1850s. Poem after poem brings a conk or two, and indeed this particular collection is entitled Conks of Ruby, though who Ruby was, I have yet to ascertain. As we've seen, some critics, regrettably, were hostile to Chivers. Some were understandably enthusiastic. Edgar Allan Poe, for his part, was curiously ambivalent. He wrote that Chivers was one of the best and one of the worst poets in America. His productions, said Poe, affect one as a wild dream, strange, incongruous, full of images of more than arabesque monstrosity and snatches of sweet, unsustained song. Even his worst nonsense, and some of it is horrible, had an indefinite charm of sentiment and melody. We can never be sure that there is any meaning in his words. His figures of speech are metaphor run mad.